Good to be in Virginia, man. Thanks for pulling this together. Thanks for having us. You and your family have a deep history here. Talk me through who we're meeting, why, what this week looks like.
I mean, the rhetoric around it's gotten so extreme, particularly on the anti-gun side. And at the end of the day, what we're talking about is a human right, the right to defend your life. You know, if you can't buy the arms to which you have a right, well, then you can't exercise that right. We're going to tell that perspective from the largest e-commerce retailers in the space, some of the largest brick and mortar retailers in the space, and all the way down to the mom and pops, and just, you know, really try to find out when you take the new laws, you take the draconian regulation, you take the confusion and the ambiguity and the moving target. You know, what does it feel like if you're a Virginian that believes in liberty and wants to exercise your right to bear arms? Can you even do it? And I think that's going to be a neat story for us to tell.
Welcome to Green Top, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Glad to have you here. I'm going to give you a little tour, let you show you around.
Awesome.
See what you think, all right?
Let's do it.
Sounds good. So as you walk right in our store, obviously you see we are in the gun business. Used guns is a tremendous part of our business. We procure a lot of our used firearms through large collections, but we also get them in on trade-ins here at the store, or people just selling them outright for cash.
Nice.
So every day we take in on average, comes to the front door, probably between 30 and 40 firearms a day.
Holy cow, good for you guys.
There's always something new, something better, something innovative. A lot of these gun companies are good at that, so having that trade-in is good. In my opinion, I think it's one of the best ammo selections in the country. It's a pretty massive department. It's a lot of money sitting in here right now, and the selection is incredible. If you look at this Benelli wall, and they said, man, what can we do to get like an end cap in your store just for Benelli? And I said, an end cap? I said, well, why don't we just give you a whole wall?
I love it.
And he said, are you serious? And I said, look, if you guys come up with something, I'll give you this whole wall and you guys create it. And this is what they came up with. This was the first of its kind in the entire country, and I think now there's 10 or 12 more nationwide and other independents like us. The backside of that is Browning, of course, long-time relationship with Browning. They couldn't stand to see this, so they had to get themselves one. So we got Browning and Winchester. They stepped up and they wanted to do the same thing.
Yeah.
It really shows you what a partnership and a relationship with a company like us and them can do together.
That's so powerful.
You know,
well, and you guys are legendary. Like, I've always heard, when I hear Green Top, I hear Benelli. Like, you guys are the Benelli store, and it's cool to see it in person, and two great companies coming together.
That's right. Yeah, we appreciate that. I'm Hunter Brooks, Vice President and General Manager of Green Top Sporting Goods. We've been in business since 1947. I'm in my 27th year here at Green Top. I've been working here since I was 19 years old. So July 1 was pretty tough for us because we were put in a position we've never been put in before, and that was new laws were in place to where we could not sell certain types of firearms any longer. As far as July 1, we came in here and there's a lot of emptiness. I mean, a lot of handguns were missing, a lot of pegs were empty because we could no longer sell high-capacity magazines.
The things that changed for us, for our dealers, on July 1st in Virginia was there was just a lot more uncertainty introduced. And I think that's one of the biggest issues that a lot of states are facing right now is things become unclear. They start with being unconstitutional and then they evolve to being unclear. And both of those are bad for the industry, bad for the country.
We started prepping for that in March, really. When we knew these laws were going to pass, we started prepping for it. July 1st came, couldn't sell magazines over 15 rounds anymore, couldn't sell AR-15 rifles, couldn't sell AR-15 pistols. It changed a lot for us, and it was very difficult for us to accept that. And then walking in here that next day, knowing that things were going to change, it was a tough pill to swallow, I'm not going to lie.
There was a little bit of scrambling and a lot more work that they had to do to post new products, make sure that they can ship, compliance, rules and regulations, and there's also been a lot of back and forth, turning back on, then turning back off. and they've told us that there's just a whole lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of confusion around what exactly the law means and how it was written.
Your type of FFL, I think, is crucial in the health of the system. I'd love to turn now to the Virginia laws.
Yep.
And like you said, you've gone through cycles here. And we talk a lot about this is not a political issue, this is a human rights issue that gets politicized. Would love to hear your history of kind of dealing with this 15 plus years, it sounds like, as an FFL, being in the industry. Talk to us about that history and kind of what's happened with this recent bill passed on July 1st.
I mean, I'll back that up a little bit further. When I could start buying guns, we were coming off the federal assault weapons ban. Then you go into whatever the local gun shop is at the time, and it's like, why does it look different? And why does that matter? And that's as a 16, 17, 18-year-old kid. So, then we kind of fast forward and it's like, you still have some old laws on the books, like Richmond always had a magazine capacity. So like I know guys that when they would go to shoot competitions, they had to drive around Richmond. So they didn't drive through it and risk getting pulled over and their gun seized because they were going to a shooting competition.
I think that the difficulty has really put in, and not just for dealers, but also for consumers. Some of them are not sure exactly what transporting might mean, or certain verbiage within the laws. And I think it's important that the people who are involved really focus on education, they do their due diligence, they talk to trusted sources that can help them navigate those uncertainties.
One of the big problems I have with any time assault weapons bans gets put out, it seems like every state follows kind of the same MO on it is, like most laws, you have people who are writing these things based on it seems like when you read them, what they've seen on TV, what their buddy told them, or, what they can Google real quick. It's, if we sit down and read the text of what they've just pushed through here in Virginia, to anybody who has beyond a beginner understanding of firearms, how they work, it's hard to really understand what they're trying to do here.
Yeah.
A lot of these things that they call out, they don't make anything function any differently. A lot of times they actually make it harder for folks to use these firearms properly.
Yeah. We've seen that even with our business. We had a couple congressional bills against what we're doing with financial products in the firearm industry, and you could see these aides had put in language around this and they had no understanding of what they were talking around. They'll get it from, activist groups, and they're just trying to throw in a basket of definitions and language to catch everything, but without any real understanding. And one thing we've noticed being here on the ground in Virginia, talking to a lot of folks, is just it's created a ton of ambiguity of even for FFLs, for customers, which I'm sure you've seen, can we sell, can we not with the injunction.
Right.
Being an entrepreneur that has gone through regulatory change and uncertainty, I totally empathize with what you guys are going through, and walk me through kind of that gut feeling you guys had when you knew this was coming and how it impacts your business. And it's those are the things that keep you up at night. How'd you guys get through that?
So knowing the regime change was coming in Virginia, it made us realize that we used to always look at states like California, New York, New Jersey, that with these tough, strict gun laws, and we used to say, man, that's a tough place to be, and it must suck to live there and have to live under that sort of rule. But it happened to us. It can happen to any state. That's where I think a lot of people need to realize you better be prepared for this, because it could be coming to a state legislature near you.
So I didn't know anything about guns. My family's from New York City, did not grow up with guns. So I studied China first. So I was in China for 10 years. I guess it looked at an approach of a different style of government where it's more authoritarian and they tell you what to do. When you start to understand how things work there, I think that's when I truly understood the value of this country. Because I think a lot of people, including myself, didn't understand that until I saw something else. So once I got there, once I understood the language and I could understand everything that was going on, it's not based on the individual and your individual rights. It's a group-based society where they don't really care about your rights. Nobody cares, right? When I was over there, I was like, you know what? I saw really corrupt police departments. It wasn't rule of law, it was rule of means, but who you were. So I was like, you know what, I think I'm gonna go. And at that time, I think law enforcement in the US was getting some shit about certain things. So I decided I'm gonna become a cop. So I moved back here and became a Richmond cop. And then you see, so that's how I got into firearms, because I didn't know anything about firearms. I had a really good instructor who now works for Glock, actually. Anyway, that's how I got into guns. And then I saw firsthand in Richmond, the police cannot save, like there's no way realistically you can expect the police to come and save you.
You know, having lived in, states in the United States that have restrictive state laws that differ from the explicit nature of the Second Amendment, it can be really challenging in terms of, gun ownership, and then as well as just confidently pursuing, owning guns and using firearms in those states. There's changing laws, there's uncertainty with the compliance, and all of a sudden an inalienable right that we have, a law-abiding citizen can be charged unknowingly, and that's unfair.
You see incidents like Katrina, where people are like, the police aren't there, and they're going to protect their family first, so they're not going to be available. During the BLM stuff in 2020, when we worked those first couple nights, there was not enough people. Even when they called everybody in, they were burning. I think a museum got burned down. They were looting grocery stores. So basically, if you called for help, Richmond would not send anybody unless you could get, I think you had to have 20 officers, which is impossible, right? Once they got ready and set, they might send somebody. So basically you were on your own. That's why businesses and everything got destroyed.
That's what we saw in 2020 and post 2020, is that was when we started to see that wave of first-time gun buyers. Like folks that didn't grow up with firearms, they're suddenly like, whoa, I need to be able to defend myself and my property and my business. I can't sit here and wait for 10, 20, 30 minutes for the police to arrive. And we saw,
and it was longer. Sometimes they wouldn't come all night.
Oh man, it is, it's scary to think about, even scary to live through. Talk to me about your customers and how there's obviously demand, strong demand here in Virginia. Your store proves that out.
Sure.
Been around since 1947 selling guns, sporting goods, outdoor equipment. That is a hard message to deliver to your customers.
It is.
So talk me through what's happened there.
It's been a tough pill to swallow, not just for us, but for our customers too.
Yeah.
They enjoy coming in here and shopping in here and seeing, that beautiful Daniel Defense Pro Shop that we had, one of the first in the country.
Yeah.
And having to take that apart and bring that down, because obviously we couldn't sell any of their rifles anymore, was very difficult. But our customers are the most important piece to our success, and having to see them go through this and this panic buy, this rush buy leading up to July 1st,
right?
Having to spend money on things that they may not necessarily be able to afford to buy right now, but they want it because the government's telling them they can't have it.
Yeah.
It was tough.
As a detective, when I would go to cases, a lot of times people drive stolen vehicles through a wall. It's happened to many gun stores.
Right.
Stolen vehicle through the wall, right? Grab as much as they can and go. So no matter what you do, that happens. So I always lock my stuff up anyway.
Right.
I don't leave it out. It goes in locked safes every night.
Right.
All my serialized items. But I think the new legislation requires you do that. If you don't have, there might be some caveat if you have some kind of security in the front.
Right.
But I think that was a new law for FFL. And then the big one, which you know about, I'm sure this is what Green Top and all these stores are being affected by, is the negligence civil side, right? If Jay Jones finds you negligent, and he can sue you, and what negligent is very subjective. Right? So I think that's the big thing, and we don't know what that looks like yet, because I don't think it's been used, but it's the elephant in the room, right? Because that's your livelihood, that's your money and everything.
Well, that's a broad brushstroke right there.
So, but until litigation happens and there's some kind of rulings, or nobody knows. And like I said, I'm sure that's what Green Top, Cabela's, and all these stores are worried about, because they have lots of assets, right? Whereas I don't have as many assets as they do on my LLC.
The big one right now is the injunction, and it's look, I'm not an attorney. I've read through a lot of case law stuff, trying to make my own mind up on these things over the years, and the injunction is against enforcement right now. It doesn't stay the law from going into effect. So right now, the assault weapons ban here in Virginia is in effect. That puts us dealers in a really, I think, precarious position. My concern is also we have this Nobody seems to be talking about it, but we have this liability law against gun shops that also went into effect on July 1st. And that, to me, that's the scary one. Like, we can deal with the assault weapons ban. We think the courts are going to be favorable to our position on that. This liability law is, you know, if we read through the text, it's pretty bad. There's civil liability from the state, there's criminal liability from the state, and then anybody who feels like they were negatively affected, there's civil and criminal liability from them. You know, nobody's talking about the state's liable, even though they're the ones who approve the background check. And it's not, in the law's not written with firearms, it's firearm accessories.
Jeez.
So I'd like to see that one addressed in court. You know,
it is pure and total intimidation by the government against its people when they're
100%.
putting liability on that. And
100%.
it is the very tyranny that the founding fathers were afraid would happen, you know, and they are taking our basic human rights. And I mean, this is the part that I think everyone in the 2A community and beyond need to hear of, like, this is the level at which the government will go to try to hurt people that are doing something that's protected in our Constitution. From someone who didn't grow up with guns, went to China, there is a lot of propaganda around gun rights and just the Second Amendment, I would say. What would you say to the American who's never owned a gun, who's maybe skeptical about guns, like, with your experience, because you're unique in this community with your background, what would you say to them about our gun rights and Second Amendment rights?
One, I don't think everybody, like, you don't have to have a gun. I respect everybody's right to not have a gun if they choose to. But if you just, my major was history, that's what I studied. And when people say, oh, the government will never become tyrannical, I mean, you don't have to look very far back in history. I mean, even people are like, oh, that's third world. No, I mean, Europe, it happened recently, right? Spain was a dictatorship till I forgot what year. I mean, it happens a lot, right? So when you lose your rights to firearms, like, the founding fathers understood that that was a fundamental right and put it as the Second Amendment and said, shall not be infringed. I believe it's the only amendment that says that. It's not a crazy notion if you actually look at history. I'm not saying we should all go out with guns, and we don't need to do that. I like peace. War is terrible, it's chaotic, there's no law and order, people get murdered, raped, terrible. But there's a balance to that, and the founding fathers understood that, and that's when they put it in, right? Nobody wants to, like, that's terrible. If you think that we should go to war for something stupid, like, you're an idiot. Like, war is terrible. But there's a bulwark. Is it worse if you have a totalitarian government? Like, governments have killed way more people than even the numbers in our inner cities are being killed. I think the citizens having guns is the least of the problem with violence. I mean, wars kill way more people, and that's by governments. And like in China, you don't have any kind of rights, really. Like, they can just arbitrarily pick you up and take you. Free is subjective. Even Americans can't agree on what freedom means. Well, when you go to those countries, it's completely different because they're, like I said before, they don't look at it as an individual, it's a group. So they can pretty much do what they want to too. Most places in the world are that way, and Americans forget that. There's only a few places where you have rights.
It's like if individual citizens retain their sovereignty, then the government remains checked and not tyrannical.
Right.
And if citizens lose their sovereignty and their rights, then you have a much greater propensity to find an oppressive government that's tyrannical.
Yeah.
This is the most fluid legal situation I've ever seen in 27 years that I've been with the company. So we're monitoring that as close as we possibly can, but we're also keeping in mind that the most important thing that we need to remember is we have 165 people that work for this company.
Yeah.
We got to keep them safe. We got to keep their families safe. We have to, it's very important that we do that.
Yeah. The hardest part, that us sitting back and watching all of this, and we have a lot of partners that are wrapped up in this, is seeing some of the infighting, even within our own community, which is, none of us wanted this.
Right.
I mean, there's nothing more than you guys would love to have your Daniel Defense Pro Shop right now.
Sure.
This has nothing to do with you guys not standing up for the Second Amendment and our right to bear arms. It's to your point of, you got to survive the fight to win the war long term, right?
That's right. Yeah, and I mean, this is going to take some time.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, the high court is probably going to have to make the call on this. I hope they do it sooner than later.
Yeah.
But that's going to be the biggest challenge is the Supreme Court getting to this case and hearing it.
This is a constitutionally protected product,
Right.
and long term we're going to win it in the courts. But we got to go through a lot of pain in the meantime.
Absolutely.
And you got to survive, and you
That's
guys are
right.
surviving.
And if
so.
you want to survive, you're just going to have to be patient.
Back around the time of the Revolution, I mean, Virginia was the frontier, the Blue Ridge and the Appalachian Mountains. That was the frontier. Now this is the old country. This is where it's where it all began and the philosophical roots were laid.
You know, that's what's cool about the United States and in this experiment. And, you know, really what has brought us here is, you know, Cordova sits in such a unique place in the sense that we've become the financial plumbing for the industry. So we get to work across all kinds of different companies and reach many different companies in the Second Amendment industry. And, you know, we get to see these stories and hear these stories of how everyone is impacted by laws like this. And, you know, being to come here and tell the story all the way from a big retailer that's been here since the 1940s to a small FFL, it's deeply important. And, you know, as you know, we started to see that it was time to tell these stories. You know, we've been hearing them for years now, and it's like, you know, the average American needs to hear these stories and these great people that are really providing a constitutionally protected product and service to Americans and how they're being impacted by these type of egregious laws that are being passed.
Yeah.